Listen carefully, because this is where most people get it completely wrong. You think protecting your peace means deleting numbers, blocking people, disappearing from every room, and turning your back on everyone who ever disappointed you. No. Sometimes the strongest move isn't leaving. It's staying exactly where you are, while becoming completely unavailable to the chaos. You don't need to cut everyone off. You just need to stop feeding them your attention, because some people don't need access to your life to control your emotions. They only need a reaction. A comment can ruin your morning. A message can change your mood. A rumor can make you question yourself. Someone's disrespect can keep playing in your head for hours, while they're somewhere living their life like nothing happened. And that's the trap. You keep giving energy to people who aren't even carrying the weight of what they did to you. So stop. Not dramatically. Not bitterly. Not with some announcement telling everyone you're done. Just become quieter. Let them talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them wonder why you're no longer explaining every decision, defending every move, or chasing every little piece of approval. Because your energy is expensive. Your attention is limited. And every time you spend it on something that doesn't deserve it, you're taking it away from something that does. Your future, your discipline, your goals, your peace, your growth. You don't have to hate people to stop entertaining them. You don't have to expose them. You don't have to prove they're wrong. Sometimes the most powerful response is simply refusing to participate in the emotional game anymore. You see the behavior, and you don't react. You hear the opinion, and you don't absorb it. You notice the disrespect, and you don't chase an explanation. You understand the pattern, and you quietly change your position. That's when something changes inside you, because suddenly, they don't have the same access to your mind anymore. And that silence becomes the beginning of your power. You have been taught that peace means getting rid of everyone who makes your life difficult. Delete them. Walk away. Never speak again. Burn every bridge and call it healing. But what if peace isn't about how many people you remove from your life? What if peace is about how much power you allow those people to have over your mind? Because you can cut someone off and still carry them everywhere. You can delete their number and still replay their words before you sleep. You can stop following them and still wonder what they're doing. You can walk away from the relationship and still spend months arguing with them inside your head. You can leave the room physically while giving that person unlimited space inside your thoughts. That's not freedom. That's just distance without peace. And this is where you need to become brutally honest with yourself. Sometimes you're not actually trying to protect your peace. You're trying to make someone feel your absence. You're hoping they notice. You're waiting for them to regret what they did. You're imagining the moment they finally understand what they lost. And while you're waiting for that moment, you're still emotionally connected to them. They are still controlling the temperature of your day. They say something, you react. They ignore you, you overthink. They criticize you, you defend yourself. They post something, you wonder if it's about you. They succeed, you compare. They fail, you feel satisfied. Look at that carefully. Even when you're no longer talking to them, you're still letting them occupy the driver's seat of your emotions. That's not peace. Real peace begins when you stop needing people to behave differently before you allow yourself to feel okay. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't need everyone to respect your choices. You don't need everyone to apologize. You don't need everyone to admit they were wrong. And you definitely don't need to destroy every connection simply because someone disappointed you. Some people can remain in your environment without remaining in your emotional world. That's the difference. You can greet someone without trusting them. You can work with someone without becoming attached to their opinion. You can love someone while recognizing that they don't deserve unlimited access to you. You can forgive someone without giving them the same position they had before. You can sit in the same room and refuse to enter the same argument. That's maturity, not becoming cold, not becoming cruel, not pretending you don't care. It's learning that caring doesn't mean surrendering control of your nervous system to another person's behavior. Because some people will test you simply because they know you react. They know which sentence will irritate you. They know which subject will make you defensive. They know how to pull you into explanations. And every time you take the bait, they don't need to control your actions anymore. They control your attention. So stop giving them the satisfaction of becoming predictable. You don't have to answer every accusation. You don't have to correct every misunderstanding. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited into. You don't have to prove your character to people committed to judging you. Let them have their version. Let them tell the story differently. Let them believe whatever makes sense to them. Your job is not to manage the opinions living inside someone else's head. Your job is to manage what happens inside yours. And that's where your real power starts becoming visible. You begin noticing that silence doesn't always mean weakness. Sometimes silence means you finally understood that the conversation has nowhere useful to go. You begin realizing that walking away doesn't always mean losing. Sometimes walking away means refusing to lose yourself. You begin understanding that boundaries don't require dramatic announcements. Sometimes a boundary is simply becoming less available to what repeatedly drains you. You don't need to cut everyone off. You need to stop handing everyone the keys to your emotions. Because the moment you stop allowing every person's mood, opinion, rejection, insult, or approval to determine how you feel about yourself, something inside you becomes much harder to disturb. You keep thinking your greatest resource is time. It isn't. It's attention. You can have 24 hours in a day and still waste your entire life because your mind is constantly occupied by people who don't deserve a minute of it. Think about how strange that is. Someone says one disrespectful sentence to you in the morning, and suddenly they get to live inside your head until midnight. Someone doesn't reply to your message, and you keep checking your phone. Someone criticizes your appearance, your choices, your success, your relationships, and instead of letting the words pass, you carry them around like evidence against yourself. Why? Because you gave their opinion a seat at your table. And most people don't realize how expensive that is. Attention is energy. Where you repeatedly place your attention, your mind begins building a world around it. Keep staring at problems and problems become larger. Keep watching what other people are doing, and suddenly your own life starts looking small. keep analyzing who likes you, who dislikes you, who is jealous, who is talking, who is ignoring you, and eventually you become a prisoner of reactions you don't even control. That's the game you have to stop playing. Not because everyone around you is evil, not because you suddenly need to become cold, but because you finally understand that your mind cannot be available to everything. You don't have unlimited emotional bandwidth. Every argument costs something. Every unnecessary explanation costs something. Every comparison costs something. Every attempt to prove yourself costs something. And while you're spending all that energy trying to control what people think about you, your actual life is waiting for you to pay attention to it. Your goals are waiting. Your discipline is waiting. Your unfinished work is waiting. Your body is waiting for you to take care of it. Your future is waiting for you to stop staring backward. And here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes you say you don't have enough energy to change your life, but you somehow have enough energy to analyze somebody else's behavior for 3 hours. You say you're too tired to work on yourself, but you're never too tired to check who viewed your story. You say you want peace, but you keep returning to the same conversations in your mind. You say you don't care anymore, but one little comment can still change your entire mood. That's not because you're weak. It's because your attention has been trained to chase emotional noise. And anything trained can be retrained. You can start becoming selective. You can hear criticism without immediately defending yourself. You can notice disrespect without turning it into a personal war. You can see someone succeeding without turning their success into a measurement of your worth. You can watch someone walk away without desperately chasing an explanation. You can allow people to have opinions without making those opinions your identity. That is where your freedom starts. Imagine how dangerous your focus becomes when you stop wasting it on things you cannot control. Instead of asking, why did they do that? You ask, what am I going to do next? Instead of asking, what are they saying about me? You ask, what am I building? Instead of asking, why don't they recognize my value? You ask, why am I still waiting for their recognition? Those questions change everything, because attention is like a spotlight. Whatever you keep shining it on becomes the main character in your mind. So stop making people the main character of your life when they haven't earned the role. Let them misunderstand. Let them move differently. Let them make their choices. Let them talk. Let them be exactly who they are. You don't need to chase every disturbance just because it appeared in front of you. Some things deserve an answer. Some things deserve a boundary. And some things deserve absolutely nothing from you. The moment you understand that difference, you stop living like every external event deserves an internal reaction. You become harder to distract, harder to provoke, harder to pull away from your purpose. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you finally learned where your feelings deserve to go. There is a strange kind of power that appears when you stop reacting to everything. Not because you stopped caring, not because you became emotionless, but because you finally realized that every reaction doesn't deserve to become a performance. Someone says something disrespectful. You hear it, you notice it, and instead of immediately firing back, you pause. That pause changes everything. Because most people don't lose control when something happens. They lose control in the few seconds after it happens. Something touches their ego, their pride, their insecurity, their fear, and suddenly they respond before they even understand what they're feeling. One sentence becomes an argument. One argument becomes a relationship problem. One relationship problem becomes days of resentment. And eventually you're exhausted, wondering how something so small became so big. It became big because you fed it. You gave it your attention. You gave it your emotions. You gave it your words. You gave it your time. You gave it a reaction. And once you understand that, you start becoming selective about what gets access to you. You don't need to respond to every accusation. You don't need to correct every false assumption. You don't need to prove that you were right. You don't need to defend your character every time someone decides to misunderstand you. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is simply observe. Watch the behavior. Listen to the words. Notice the pattern. Then decide what deserves your response. That's different from ignoring everything. It means you're no longer operating automatically. You're thinking before you move. You're allowing yourself to see the situation instead of immediately becoming part of it. And that's where emotional control begins. Imagine someone tries to provoke you. They expect anger. You give them calm. They expect an explanation. You give them silence. They expect you to chase. You step back. They expect you to become defensive. You simply continue with your life, not because you're trying to punish them, not because you're playing some psychological game, because you don't want to become a version of yourself that exists only because somebody else pushed the right button. Think about how much freedom that gives you. If someone can insult you and instantly control your mood, they have influence over you. If someone can ignore you and instantly make you question your worth, they have influence over you. If someone can criticize you and make you abandon your confidence, they have influence over you. But when you can observe those things without allowing them to dictate your behavior, something changes. You still see everything. You simply stop allowing everything to move you. That's the difference between awareness and reaction. Awareness says, I see what is happening. Reaction says, I must do something about it right now. Awareness gives you options. Reaction gives the situation control. And you need to understand something uncomfortable. Not everyone deserves the most emotional version of you. Some people only know how to communicate through conflict. Some people are addicted to attention. Some people will keep pushing because every time they push, you prove that they can move you. Stop proving it. Let your calm become unpredictable. Let your patience become stronger than your impulse. Let your discipline become louder than your anger. And when you feel that urge to respond immediately, ask yourself one question: what happens if I don't? Maybe nothing. Maybe the argument disappears. Maybe the person reveals themselves without your help. Maybe the situation loses its power because you stopped feeding it. And sometimes you discover that the response you wanted to give was never necessary in the first place. You don't have to win every conversation. You don't have to get the final word. You don't have to make everyone understand your perspective. You only need to remain in control of yourself. Because when you stop reacting automatically, people have fewer buttons to press. And when they realize that your emotions are no longer available on demand, the entire dynamic begins to change. You spend too much time trying to make people understand you. You explain why you made that decision. You explain why you walked away. You explain why you changed. You explain why you didn't answer. You explain why you chose yourself. And somehow, after all those explanations, you're still standing in front of someone who has already decided what they want to believe about you. That's when you need to understand something. Not everyone is asking for an explanation because they genuinely want to understand. Some people ask because they want access to your reasoning. They want to inspect your choices. They want to challenge your boundaries. They want to keep the conversation going until you become exhausted enough to surrender. And if you keep explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, you will spend your entire life defending a version of yourself that never needed a defense. You don't owe everyone a courtroom presentation about your life. You made a decision. You know why. That's enough. There is a strange insecurity that makes people believe they need permission for every move they make. They want everyone to approve, everyone to agree, everyone to understand, everyone to see their intentions. But life doesn't work that way. People will misunderstand you. People will judge you. People will create stories about you from incomplete information. And sometimes they will confidently believe things about you that aren't even true. You can spend your energy correcting every story, or you can keep living. That choice is yours. The moment you stop explaining everything, you may feel uncomfortable at first, because silence can feel like losing control. You might think, what if they think I'm guilty? What if they think I don't care? What if they believe their version? Let them. You cannot control the interpretation of someone who is determined to interpret you incorrectly, and chasing their approval will not create peace. It will create dependence. You become dependent on their understanding before you allow yourself to feel secure about your own choices. That's a dangerous place to live, because now every decision requires an audience. Every boundary needs approval. Every change needs an explanation. Every step forward becomes something you feel obligated to justify. No, you don't need permission to grow. You don't need permission to become quieter. You don't need permission to protect your time. You don't need permission to stop participating in conversations that drain you. And you certainly don't need to keep explaining a boundary to someone who keeps testing it. There is power in saying less, not because silence automatically makes you powerful, but because silence forces you to stop wasting energy where your words aren't producing anything useful. You begin realizing that some conversations are not conversations. They're negotiations over your self-respect. And every time you explain yourself again, you're giving the other person another opportunity to argue with your decision. So stop reopening the door. You said no. No is a complete sentence. You changed your mind. That's allowed. You don't feel comfortable. That's enough information. You don't want to continue the relationship. You can leave without writing a 10-page explanation. You want to focus on yourself. You don't need everyone to understand why. And here's the part that will bother your ego. Sometimes people will be disappointed in you when you finally choose yourself. Let them be disappointed. Someone else's disappointment doesn't automatically mean you've done something wrong. Sometimes it simply means they were benefiting from the version of you that had no boundaries. They were comfortable when you answered every call. They were comfortable when you explained every decision. They were comfortable when you apologized for things you didn't do. They were comfortable when you constantly tried to prove that you were a good person. But the moment you stop performing for approval, they may call you distant, cold, changed, difficult. Let them use whatever word makes sense to them. You know what changed. You stopped abandoning yourself just to keep other people comfortable. You stopped turning every misunderstanding into an emergency. You stopped treating someone else's opinion like a verdict. And slowly, you become comfortable with being misunderstood. That's a different kind of freedom. Because once you stop needing everyone to understand you, you become free to live according to your values instead of their expectations. You can protect your energy without becoming a bitter person. Read that again. Because sometimes when people get hurt enough, they don't build boundaries. They build walls. They stop trusting everyone. They stop caring. They start assuming every kind person has an agenda and every relationship is eventually going to become a disappointment. They call it strength. But underneath it, there is still pain. Real strength doesn't require you to become cruel just because someone was cruel to you. You don't have to become the thing that hurt you. You can learn from what happened without allowing it to poison everything that comes after. That's the difference between protection and bitterness. Protection says, I know what I will tolerate now. Bitterness says, nobody can be trusted. Protection creates boundaries. Bitterness creates isolation. Protection makes you selective. Bitterness makes you suspicious of everyone. And if you're not careful, the people who hurt you once can continue controlling you long after they've disappeared from your life. They hurt you. Then you spend years becoming someone who cannot be reached. Think about that. They don't even have to be present anymore. Their behavior is still deciding how you treat people. Their betrayal is still deciding how much you trust. Their disrespect is still deciding how you communicate. Their rejection is still deciding how close you allow people to get. That's not freedom. That's an old wound making new decisions. You need boundaries, but you don't need emotional armor around every part of yourself. Not everyone deserves access to you. That's true. But that doesn't mean nobody deserves access to you. Some people will respect your boundaries. Some people will genuinely care about your well-being. Some people will show up without demanding that you become smaller for them. You have to leave room for those people. Otherwise, your protection becomes another prison. The goal isn't to stop feeling. The goal isn't to stop trusting. The goal isn't to become impossible to hurt. The goal is to become wise about where you place your trust, time, attention, and emotional energy. You can be kind without being available to everyone. You can forgive without reconnecting. You can understand someone's pain without accepting their harmful behavior. You can wish someone well from a distance. You can love someone and still say, "You don't get unlimited access to me." That's not hatred. That's clarity. And clarity is what bitterness often lacks. Bitterness wants revenge. Clarity wants peace. Bitterness keeps checking whether someone regrets what they did. Clarity stops checking. Bitterness wants the other person to suffer. Clarity wants you to stop suffering. That's a completely different mindset. So don't make dramatic promises that you'll never trust again. Don't tell yourself you'll never care again. Don't turn one person's behavior into a permanent judgment against humanity. Instead, become more selective. Watch consistency. Pay attention to how people treat you when they don't need anything from you. Notice whether their words match their behavior. Notice how they respond when you say no. Notice whether they respect your boundaries without making you feel guilty for having them. You don't need to interrogate people. You don't need to become paranoid. You simply need to observe. Let people reveal themselves through patterns. And when someone repeatedly shows you that they are not safe for your peace, you don't need a dramatic confrontation every time. You can simply reduce access. Less information, less availability, less emotional investment, less explanation, less reaction, and more focus on yourself. That's how you protect your energy without becoming bitter. You don't have to announce your boundaries like a warning. You can simply live them. You don't have to punish people for losing access to you. You just stop giving access where it is no longer healthy. And if someone calls you selfish because you finally started protecting your time, remember that people who benefited from your lack of boundaries may not celebrate your boundaries. That's okay. Your peace was never supposed to depend on their approval. You can walk away without hatred. You can move forward without revenge. You can become wiser without becoming colder, because the strongest version of you isn't the one who trusts nobody. It's the one who understands that trust is earned, access is limited, and kindness does not require self-abandonment. There comes a point when you realize that you have been talking too much to people who were never listening. Explaining, defending, clarifying, responding. Trying to make someone understand your intentions when they had already decided what they wanted to believe about you. And maybe you thought the answer was to find better words. Maybe you thought, if you explained yourself one more time, they would finally understand. But sometimes the problem isn't your explanation. The problem is that they don't want to understand. And that's when silence becomes something different. Not weakness, not fear, not surrender. A decision. You stop giving every situation a reaction. You stop answering every accusation. You stop turning every misunderstanding into an emergency. You stop feeling responsible for managing everybody else's opinion of you. And suddenly, your life becomes quieter. But there's something almost uncomfortable about that quiet at first. Because you're used to responding. You're used to checking your phone. You're used to wondering what someone meant. You're used to writing messages in your head. You're used to imagining conversations that may never happen. You're used to explaining what you would say if you ever got the chance. Silence removes all of that. It forces you to sit with yourself. And when you finally do, you discover something strange. You were not exhausted because life was always difficult. You were exhausted because you were constantly emotionally participating in things that didn't require your participation. Every comment became an argument. Every opinion became a challenge. Every delay became rejection. Every disagreement became something you had to fix. You were treating every disturbance like an invitation. Now you stop. Someone wants to argue. You don't rush toward the argument. Someone misunderstands you. You don't immediately start defending yourself. Someone tries to pull you into gossip. You don't need to know every detail. Someone wants your attention just because they're bored. You don't have to provide it. Someone suddenly becomes interested because you've become distant. You don't have to reward the behavior with immediate access. This doesn't mean you become careless. There are moments when you should speak. There are situations where silence would be irresponsible. There are boundaries that need to be communicated clearly. But you stop confusing communication with constant explanation. You stop confusing kindness with availability. You stop confusing peace with keeping everyone happy. And this is where your silence becomes a standard. You begin deciding that not everything deserves your emotional energy. Not every message deserves an immediate answer. Not every insult deserves a response. Not every rumor deserves correction. Not every person deserves access to your inner world. And the more comfortable you become with that, the less desperate you feel to control how other people perceive you. You start letting people have their opinions. Let them think you're distant. Let them think you've changed. Let them wonder why you're not reacting anymore. Let them create their own theories. You don't have to interrupt every story people tell about you. Your life will eventually speak more clearly than your explanations ever could. And here's the part people don't expect. When you stop reacting, you also stop giving people emotional instructions. They can't predict exactly what will make you angry. They can't assume you'll chase them when they withdraw. They can't rely on you to defend yourself every time they criticize you. They can't keep pulling you into the same cycle simply because they've learned which button to press. You become calmer, not because nothing affects you, because you learn to choose what deserves to affect you. That is a different kind of strength. It's the strength of restraint, the strength of patience, the strength of knowing that sometimes saying nothing is more honest than saying something you don't actually mean. And slowly you stop needing the last word. You stop needing the perfect comeback. You stop needing someone else to regret their behavior before you move forward. You stop waiting for an apology before giving yourself permission to heal. You simply move, quietly, deliberately, without announcing every transformation, without explaining every boundary, without asking everyone to understand, because your silence isn't about making other people uncomfortable. It's about making your own mind peaceful. And once you discover what that peace feels like, you become much more careful about what you allow back into your life.